Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about the new reboot, the 2022 reboot of The Batman. This is a Batman interpretation by director Matt Reeves, who's worked on the most recent Planet of the Apes trilogy. He's worked on Cloverfield. He's worked on the remake of Let Me In. He's made quite a few big films over the years, and so Warner Brothers hired him to direct this new reboot of Batman, or in this case, The Batman. And in this film, you guys, basically, it's about Batman in his second year. It's really not much of an origin story. It's just more so Batman in his early stages of being Batman, so kind of Bruce Wayne getting used to that life. And so on his second year of being the Cape Crusader, and he's basically working as a detective. He's working closely with young Commissioner Gordon, who I think is even just referred to as Lieutenant Gordon in this. I don't think he's even a commissioner yet in this universe quite yet. And so basically, the two of them kind of tackle detective cases together. The police really don't kind of trust Batman yet just because he is on his second year and they view him as a vigilante. And because Gotham is such a dark place, specifically in this version of Gotham City in particular, they really can't trust anybody that doesn't work for the police department. And so over the course of the film, there's a guy who's calling himself the Riddler, the famous iconic villain from the Batman comics. So basically, the Riddler is leaving behind clues whenever he's committing a murder. And so basically, Lieutenant Gordon knows how knowledgeable Batman is on going to a crime scene and kind of dissecting it and figuring out who could potentially be this person and why are they leaving these clues behind. What do all the clues mean? What do all the clues mean when you kind of bunch them together and put all that information together? And so over the course of this film, Batman and Lieutenant Gordon have to figure out who the Riddler is. They have to live in this Gotham City where Catwoman also exists, and she also helps Batman at times, like she does in the comics and stuff. So she's not completely villain or anything like that in this movie. And then we also get other iconic characters like the Penguin show up in this that are also connected to the whole Riddler case that Batman has to solve. And so over the course of this film, Batman has to figure out who the Riddler is, how to stop him, and how to stop some of his long-term plans before they go too far. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed this new Batman movie. I didn't enthusiastically love this movie, like I didn't profoundly love it. I am one of those people where I really loved what Christopher Nolan did with his Dark Knight trilogy. I love Batman Begins, and I love The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Christopher Nolan, too, is also one of my favorite film directors. And so it's one of those things where I went into this film kind of thinking to myself, how in the world are they going to top what he did with the Dark Knight trilogy? And so even though Matt Reeves did bring a lot of new stuff to the table, like making Batman a detective and going more of like a hard-boiled detective film noir kind of story, um, there is things about this film that I absolutely love, don't get me wrong, but it's just one of those films where everything felt a little secondary to me. It just felt like um, a really good different director telling us the story of Batman. And though it's not as good as what Christopher Nolan did in his Dark Knight trilogy, there is a lot of things here to really enjoy. So I am going to go over some positives and negatives as why I really enjoyed this Batman movie, why it's a really good Batman movie. I would say it's actually very far from some of the worst ones. It's way, way superior than the Joel Schumacher films, and it's way superior than the Ben Affleck Batman movies that we got recently. I really didn't care for those too much. Um, so let's go over some positives and negatives of what I thought about the film overall, both what I really liked about it and didn't like about it. So for my positives, first and foremost, Paul Dano playing the Riddler, I thought was perfect casting. Paul Dano is actually one of my all-time favorite movies. He was in a film in 2012 called Ruby Sparks that I absolutely loved. It's probably one of my favorite films of the last decade easily. And so when I heard that he was hired to play the Riddler in this movie, I knew he was going to give a top-notch performance. He really kind of he almost kind of brought a what if the Zodiac existed in the Gotham City universe, this whole Batman DC universe thing. And I really liked his take on the character. Definitely very sadistic, very strange, very weird. Definitely likes to bring clues to the light in a very weird, dark way. So I loved how he played the Riddler and how he brought a lot of dark aspects to the character as well. So I absolutely loved his performance. Definitely very weird and out there. It definitely was very fitting for a Edward Nygma slash Riddler kind of character. Robert Pattinson as the Batman slash Bruce Wayne. I thought he was very good in this movie. I still kind of prefer Christian Bale as this character, and I also really like what Michael Keaton brought to the character back in the day. But what I like specifically about Robert Pattinson's Batman and his Bruce Wayne interpretation too is he's a very broken person. You can definitely tell the murder of his parents really kind of had a huge impact on his life. And even though the other interpretations of Batman have done this as well, this is definitely more a traumatized Batman, more of a Batman that kind of always is thinking to himself, what could I have done differently to make things play out differently? He kind of has a hard time adjusting to the real world and being around people. Alfred in his mansion is even trying to get people to schedule appointments with him within this mansion just so he doesn't have to go out and uh, face a ton of public scrutiny and public interviews and things that make him kind of uncomfortable when he's around people. So I liked how this is a more traumatized Bruce Wayne, a more because it is only 2 years after he has become Batman. It's definitely a more um, a sadder Bruce Wayne, a Bruce Wayne that really can't connect with people very well. So I really liked how Robert Pattinson played the character, though I do prefer Christian Bale and Michael Keaton as the character still more. I did really enjoy what Robert Pattinson brought to the table, and yes, I do think he is a better Batman than Ben Affleck. Matt Reeves' direction I just thought was overall pretty strong in this movie. I did like the whole film noir, hard-boiled detective take on the whole Batman storyline. And Matt Reeves is also one of those guys too, and I'll bring this up here in another one of my couple more of my other positives if I can talk correctly. Um, he's definitely an actor's director. He definitely gives a lot of great performances out of the people that work with him in his movies. So I'm definitely, like I said, going to go over some performances that I really enjoyed in this movie. But overall, I really enjoyed what Matt Reeves did as a director here. Definitely brought something new to the table. Definitely brought more of a detective take on Batman, which I thought was pretty fresh overall. I also thought the Gotham City setting this time around was pretty fresh, even though, once again, I prefer what the Dark Knight trilogy did. And I also really liked what the Joker film did back in 2019 with Gotham City. I think the setting here was very effectively done and just well crafted and well chosen out and artistically well made. So I thought all that was very well handled here in this Gotham City setting. Zoe Kravitz played Catwoman in this movie, and I really liked her take on the character. She's definitely more so a um, kind of trying to pick up the pieces of what Batman can figure out with certain things. Definitely more so her own little detective on her own cases. She definitely takes on more personal cases with things with going on with her friends and her mom and things like that. But I really liked about Zoe Kravitz's take on the character. She was kind of a romantic interest for Batman, sort of, while also kind of being a partner for Batman, willing to help him out, while also kind of having problems of her own and trauma of her own that's similar to what Batman has faced. Thus, why it's very easy to see why Selina Kyle and Batman, or Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, had a relationship in the comics, clearly. Um, so I just liked how everything you would kind of want for a Catwoman character, specifically a performance out of her in film, I thought was well handled for this movie, and I really enjoyed her take on the character. I thought it was a lot of fun. And like I said, I do like the whole Batman as a detective take on the story. It definitely brought more of the detective comic side of DC Comics, and definitely brought more so of what Batman was doing in those early years of the Batman comics, like in the 40s and the 50s and so forth, before Adam West played the character. So I just really enjoyed how they did more of a detective approach for Batman this time around. And then as far as another performance goes, actually two more performances go. Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant Gordon and John Turturro as Falcone. I thought were two very strong performances here. John Turturro was very threatening. You can definitely tell when people were in his way and he didn't like the way you were handling his business and things like that. And then Jeffrey Wright definitely had a lot of personality, definitely had a lot of fun back and forth with Batman, some comic reactions to certain things and stuff. So I thought the two of them were also very strong here. So like I said, we get tons of great performances here. Robert Pattinson, Paul Dano, Zoe Kravitz, Jeffrey Wright, and John Turturro all give great performances. So I think that just goes to show again that Matt Reeves can really get good performances out of his actors and actresses in his movies. So that really says a lot about the film. But for my negatives of the Batman, unfortunately, this film was way too long. This film was about 5 minutes shy of 3 hours, and you can definitely tell. And that goes into my next negative too. Is it's a very dense movie. It's definitely a film where they want to tell a Riddler story. They also want to throw Penguin into the mix. They also want to throw Catwoman into the mix. They also want to tell the story of the Long Halloween. They also want to tell a very brief version of the Batman origin, and just there's just so many things that they're trying to do throughout this movie, and it's just one of those things where I kind of wish certain things could have been maybe saved for another movie. Like maybe they could um, save Penguin for another movie, or cut down certain scenes, make certain scenes flow faster and make them shorter. There's just a lot of scenes here where it just feels a little too long for its own good. And like I said, it is very dense. There is a lot of information they throw at you over the course of 3 hours, unfortunately. And then that goes to my next negative point. Certain shots I thought linger for too long. There's just a lot of scenes where it felt like they could have just trimmed down a lot of stuff. And it just felt like it went on for a little too long, much longer than it should have. And so I thought that aspect of the film could have been better handled as well. Some of Batman's technology did feel very convenient at times too. There's just a lot of scenes where Batman happens to have the most perfect weapon on hand to kind of get out of a tough situation, and so there's scenes like that where it just feels very. It kind of takes you out of the film a little bit just because you don't feel like you're really watching a person at that moment. It feels like you're just kind of watching this invincible being getting out of a tough situation. So that is one thing I thought Christopher Nolan handled better in his Batman movies, is much more grounded in reality Batman. And when he got hurt, you can definitely tell. Like with Dark Knight Rises, it took him a long time to kind of get back into shape to be Batman again after years of not doing it and things like that. So I thought some of the technology this time around just felt a little too convenient for its own good. And then that goes into one of my last negative points too, is did we really need the Penguin in this movie? There's just so much going on already, and the film's already very long. I thought maybe they could have just done the Penguin spin-off thing that they've announced for HBO Max and then used them for whatever the next Batman movie would be. There's just a lot of stuff here that really didn't need to be in this. There's even times where the whole Riddler storyline is kind of distracted away to kind of focus on other things. So I thought, even though I liked what Colin Farrell did with the Penguin character and this prosthetics was very impressive, there's just a lot of things here that it has so much going on for the film that maybe Penguin could have been saved for another movie. Maybe that's just me, but that's just me. And then overall, like I said, it's just, even though I like Matt Reeves and I liked what he's done as a director for this movie in particular, he has a little long way to go before being the next Christopher Nolan. This film isn't The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight was a great crime drama. Heath Ledger gave the performance of a lifetime. I really liked that take on Gotham City the best. There's just a lot of things where everything about this film felt very secondary to me. Though very good, it felt secondary. So overall, I'm going to give The Batman an 8.5 out of 10. Very good movie. A lot of things I enjoy about this film. Unfortunately, there is a lot of things about the film too that wear it down for being as good as, let's say, The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises. Very good movie, though. 8.5 out of 10 for me. If you're a Batman fan, I think you'll enjoy this movie like I did. And I recommend it. 8.5 out of 10 for me.